Ready to dive into the thrilling world of zombie games? From survival horror to intense action, we're counting down the top picks that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Whether you're battling hordes of the undead or navigating through post-apocalyptic landscapes, these games will test your skills and your nerves. Let's jump right in. These are the best zombie video games ever. Let's begin with Dying Light. While Techland developed the original Dead Island games, Deep Silver retained the IP rights and gave Dambuster Studios permission to work on Dead Island 2. Undeterred, Techland decided to develop and publish its own spiritual successor with parkour and grappling hooks. At its core, Dying Light is a more polished version of Dead Island. Instead of exploring an island resort populated by zombies, players parkour through the fictional Middle Eastern city of Harran. The combat, mission, weapon, and movement systems are updated renditions of those found in Dead Island, and one can be forgiven for assuming the two games mostly play the same at least until nightfall. The Dead of Night is Dying Light's ace in the hole. Whenever the sun sets, enemies become more aggressive and provide more XP, which seems like an excellent time to grind. However, the game's most dangerous enemies, including the vicious Volatile, only appear at night and they feverishly chase after players. What might have started as a simple resource run can quickly turn into a desperate and fun race for survival. While Dying Light sequel is currently available and a worthwhile experience, the original Dying Light just barely edges it out as the superior zombie game. Next we have Dead Rising 2 Off the Record. Usually zombie games and other media are dark, dour affairs where survivors have to fend off zombies and bandits almost as often as they have to fend off depression. But some noteworthy titles are light-hearted adventures that let audiences have fun and almost forget the dangers zombies pose. Dead Rising 2 Off the Record is a non-canonical what-if story that mashes the best aspects of the first two Dead Rising games into one package. Instead of starring the second game's protagonist Chuck Green, the game brings back the original and far more personable hero Frank West for yet another tour inside a zombie-infested mall. And he brings his goofy charm and camera with him. Some consider Off the Record as a director's cut of Dead Rising 2, which is partially accurate. The game includes all of the weapons and locations from Dead Rising 2, while also sneaking in additional weapons and bosses. Players can still combine items into wacky weapons and photograph zombies for the experience. The result is a sandbox adventure that lets players fight zombies their own way. There is just nothing out there quite like Dead Rising. In number 8 we have Days Gone. Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare demonstrates what developers can accomplish when they put zombies in an existing open-world environment. But what happens when developers build an open world around the zombies? The answer is, unfortunately, a game that is as fun as it is underappreciated. Days Gone is an open-world playground about the adventures of motorcycle enthusiast Deacon St. John in a post-apocalyptic Oregon populated by zombies. The game's story is all about survival, and while the main character isn't the nicest guy around, he's the best guy suited to keeping everyone alive. Days Gone doesn't have the best story, but the title shines thanks to its gameplay. Days Gone features plenty of missions with varied objectives, as well as enough survival mechanics to make players feel as though they're actually surviving a zombie apocalypse. However, Days Gone's best feature is its zombies. Alone they're easy. In a group, they're a challenge. But when you catch sight of one of the game's signature hordes, which are figurative and literal tidal waves of hungry zombies, that's when your blood gets pumping. Quite frankly, Days Gone was done dirty by reviews. The game is by no means a masterpiece, but it is still a worthy member of the zombie and open-world families. Since we mentioned him, the next one is Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare. DLC campaigns usually either add to what was already there, or use the base game as a springboard to go off on a spiraling tangent. When doing the latter, why not add zombies? Rockstar Games' first open-world cowboy simulator, Red Dead Redemption, was a landmark for the time and mostly received cosmetic and multiplayer DLC. The only exception was the semi-standalone campaign Undead Nightmare, which places the game's protagonist John Marston in the middle of, well, an undead nightmare. To put it bluntly, Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare is the base Red Dead Redemption with an end times makeover. Zombies constantly attack cities, settlements are in disarray, and the four horsemen-less horses of the apocalypse roam the landscape and will carry John into battle if he can tame them. While this DLC sports the same shooting mechanics as the base game, The action is dialed up several notches thanks to charging zombie hordes and zombie-themed missions. Undead Nightmare is pure B-movie fun in the best way possible. Zombies and cowboys are an underutilized combination, and it's quite frankly gobsmacking that Rockstar didn't produce a similar DLC for Red Dead Redemption 2. Next we have Left 4 Dead 2. Most pieces of zombie media emphasize the concept of safety in numbers. Splitting up, no matter the reason, is usually a death sentence. However, are you better off teaming up with a bunch of friends or some strangers? Well, here's one way to find out. The Left 4 Dead franchise is an iconic collection, if you consider 2 games as a collection, of co-op shooters that pit up to 4 players against countless waves of zombies. Each game features pitch-perfect world building, smooth controls, and iconic zombie designs. However, the secret to Left 4 Dead is its AI director, which monitors player progress and tailors upcoming threats and respites depending on how much they thrive or struggle. While the original Left 4 Dead kicked off the franchise, Left 4 Dead 2 is the superior product thanks to its wider selection of levels, weapons, and special zombies. Plus, the game is still pretty popular, holding steady at over 20,000 players a month. Not even more recent horde shooters, such as Warhammer End Times, Vermintide, and Back 4 Blood, compare. In number 5 we have Project Zomboid. How long is too long to work on a video game? 5 years? 8 years? Trick question. So long as your game is fun and addictive, no amount of time is too long. Project Zomboid is an isometric survival game in its purest form. The player character has no motive outside of surviving the zombie apocalypse, and how one does so is entirely up to the player. Project Zomboid provides tons of character traits gamers can pick and learn to tailor their playstyle, and the game sports an unprecedented eye for detail. If a car breaks down in the game, you can't just repair it with a general skill. You need to specialize in the individual part that's kaput. While survival is the end goal in Project Zomboid, the game is designed so no matter what, either due to bad luck or arrogance, the playable character will eventually die. However, death isn't the end. Project Zomboid features a persistent world, and players can easily make a new character, possibly with different skills for a different experience, and track down their previous character's corpse to pick up where they left off. Since Project Zomboid has been in development for over a decade, it has more content than most games on the market, and the game is still being updated. And next we have Dead Space Remake. The original Dead Space is a masterful survival horror title that has terrified audiences for over a decade. Its developers Visceral Games improved on the formula with Dead Space 2, but Dead Space 3 killed the franchise. Then EA killed Visceral Games. When fans heard EA was reviving Dead Space, gamers were skeptical given EA's past actions, and because the original Dead Space team was producing their own spiritual successor. Funny how reality rarely meets our expectations. The Dead Space remake is a mostly faithful recreation of the original Dead Space. The game retains the atmospheric lighting, claustrophobic corridors, and immersive HUD-less design that once made that title so notable. However, the Dead Space remake doesn't rest on its source material's laurels. The game implements many improvements seen in the original Dead Space's sequels, such as voice acting for the main character and proper zero-G segments that let players float around. The remake even fixes the original's annoying turret section. While the Dead Space remake's developers could have kept the original's linear design, they opted for a more modern, explorable approach that lets players revisit old locations for new challenges. More importantly, the remake adds new story beats to the original Dead Space's narrative that veterans won't see coming. If EA plans on remaking the next 2 Dead Space games, they are on the right track. Number 3. Resident Evil 2 Remake. The original Resident Evil 2 is a fantastic classic. The game improved on what came before and set the standard for the franchise and survival horror titles, at least until Resident Evil 4 stole its crown. Then Capcom remade Resident Evil 2 and transformed that game into the best entry in the series so far. Resident Evil 2 Remake tells more or less the same story fans remember from the first game. Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield are trapped in Raccoon City and have to escape a hungry horde of zombies and other viral monstrosities. There are improvements and changes to the main narrative in this remake, but it's the various gameplay improvements that really stand out. Resident Evil 2 Remake takes advantage of modern technology to deliver one of the scariest Resident Evil worlds to date. Every darkened hallway and trashed room is unwelcoming and home to hidden threats. all of which are rendered in disgusting detail. However, the remake's most impressive change is Mr. X, who has been upgraded to a constant threat with all the tenacity of the xenomorph from Alien Isolation. You never know when Mr. X will show up, but when he does, you can only run. And in number 2, The Walking Dead Season 1. Telltale Games initially produced licensed titles, digital card games, and point-and-click adventures, and many games combined the above genres. Eventually, the company found its niche with narrative games, all thanks to a licensed adventure in one of pop culture's most popular zombie worlds. The Walking Dead unsurprisingly takes place in the world of Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore's The Walking Dead comic series. However, instead of starring recognizable characters such as Rick Grimes and Daryl Dixon, the game follows two protagonists built for the game, Lee Everett and Clementine. These protagonists form a father-daughter relationship in the post-apocalyptic world as they try to survive zombies, bandits, and cannibals. If that sounds similar to The Last of Us, well, The Walking Dead did it first. Mechanically, The Walking Dead is simple. You just walk around the game world, interact with the environment, and participate in timed dialogue responses and QTEs to progress the game. However, the story more than makes up for this shortcoming, as the narrative is an emotional roller coaster that begs players to come back for more, make different decisions, and see how much characters can change. While Telltale's The Walking Dead series has plenty of entries, the first season, which consists of 5 mini-episodes, is arguably the strongest. And with a similar premise, and already mentioned, we close the list with The Last of Us Part 1. Different pieces of zombie media touch on various aspects of a hypothetical zombie apocalypse. Some focus on the threats zombies cause, while others emphasize how such an event would make society break down. The Last of Us focuses on the human element. Odds are you have already heard about The Last of Us. In the game, players control the cynical and broken Joel Miller, and occasionally his ward Ellie, as they trek across a version of America that has been devastated by the cordyceps virus and the zombie-like creatures it has spawned. Unlike most zombies, these creatures are blind, but they are still durable and deadly, and one bite is still a death sentence. While The Last of Us is full of simple environmental puzzles, shootouts with survivors, and stealth sections, the heart of the game lies in the relationship between Joel and Ellie. As The Last of Us progresses, these two characters overcome their differences and even develop a surrogate father-daughter bond that pushes them to save one another, no matter the cost. It's not hard to see why HBO was interested in adapting the game. So, enjoyed our list of the best zombie games? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more gaming content, and be sure to comment below which game you think should have made the cut. Your feedback helps us improve our future videos. Until next time, and stay geek.